So let's talk about the asexual spores. They're formed from that aerial hyphae that we drew there. They're produced by one fungus when we're doing an asexual spore, just one organism involved. And so when that spore germinates, it will be identical to the parent cell. And a type of asexual spores are conidiospores. You can have uni or multiple spores, and they are not enclosed in a sac. So I drew one of them for you there. And they are produced in a chain at the end of the conidiophore. So now this, what we're saying this whole structure is an aerial hyphae, but this part is the stalk is conidiophore, and the spores are conidiospores. And when we change to something else, it'll still be something spore and then something spore. So an example of fungi that make these conidiospores are aspergillus, and that can be a pathogen, and penicillium. Here's a picture of aspergillus, and you can see those spores. This is a conidiophore, the stalk that the spores are coming off of. And here's those individual spores. Here's a picture of aspergillus in media. What does that mean? You start your computer.
Push postpone.
What? Huh?
Postpone.
Change the time first.
How
Let me do it.
Change the time first.
There.
4 hours.
Oh, what is going on? I don't like. See, I'm hooked up to the school's thing. Otherwise, this wouldn't be doing it. Again, some more showing you the spores.
Ow.
And again, you can see the nice little head there that they're coming off of, and more conidiospores. Also, in your book, you should look at these because they have pictures there, and then you'll understand. There's also what's called arthroconidia. They are formed by fragmentation of a septate hyphae into a single thicker cell. So an example of a fungi that does that is Coccidioides immitis. That one is definitely a pathogen. This is the one that my sister came down with, is Coccidioides immitis. And it causes pulmonary mycosis. Blastoconidia is formed from buds coming off the parent cell in some yeast cells. So examples of that would be Candida albicans and Cryptococcus. And Cryptococcus is a fungi that also can cause pulmonary mycosis.
Pulmonary mycosis.
Yeah, fungal disease. Mycosis is a fungal disease. Mycology is the study of the fungi. Chlamydogonidium is when a spore is formed within a hyphal segment, and Candida albicans can also do this. And you can see the pictures in your book to see the difference. A sporangiospore is a spore that is formed in a sac, and sporangium means sac, and it's formed at the end of the hyphae, and now we're going to call that hyphae a sporangiophore. And an example of this is Rhizopus. Rhizopus is one of them that you're going to have on your lab practicum. We'll see pictures of it later on, I think, in here. Oh yeah. So I'm telling you now that Rhizopus, each class is going to have a slide on Rhizopus. You will either have the sporangium, that's what this is. This would be the sporangiophore and the sporangium with the spores enclosed in it. You'll either have that one or you'll have the sexual form that we'll see later. So write down Rhizopus, asexual and sexual. Get on the internet, get something, have it around, put it on your computer where you start to become familiar with it. Sexual spores result from the fusion of nuclei from two opposite mating strains. And on page 335 in your textbook, it's going to show you both the asexual and the sexual reproduction in this Rhizopus. Rhizopus. Let's go back to Rhizopus. Rhizopus is a mold known as the black bread mold. And you've probably seen it on your own bread. Okay, so let's look at some of these fungi according to the phylum that they're in. So Rhizopus stolonifer is in the phylum Zygomycota. It is a conjugation fungi, and it's in the bread molds, and this one in particular is the black bread mold. So asexual reproduction is by sporangiospores, so that just involves one parent hyphae. And it's going to make asexual spores that when they germinate will be exactly like the parent. It also has sexual reproduction, and it's going to make a zygospore. And these are thick-walled spores, and they form from the union of two opposite mating strains. Going to end up with, they're going to have this thick, dark kind of spore that's in between them. But they come together, both put genetic information into their product there, and they make basically a baby. And that baby is called a zygospore. These fungi live in the soil, and they're saprophytic. That means that they live on decaying plant material. They're hyphae-acinocytic, and I don't expect you to memorize what the hyphae are and all that. But you should know the asexual and the sexual, what that's called for this when we talk about spores. So here's a actual picture, and you will have, one lab's going to have the sporangium on it, the other lab's going to have the zygote on it. So here's our zygote. Here's your hyphae. And we had a hyphae that was a plus hyphae and one that was a negative hyphae. They came together, exchanged genetic stuff, and made this zygospore right there. And those little things on the ends, those are suspensors that kind of hold it together. Ascomycota, those are the sac fungi. Aspergillus niger and penicillium. So if you've ever heard of that product that you can buy it in, I think the grocery store called Beano. Have you ever heard of it?
Beano gas.
You know, have you heard of it, Nicole?
Yeah.
It's supposed to make it so that if you eat chili or something that you don't have gas. And penicillium then is used so we know to make antibiotics from. So Ascomycota includes molds, the septate hyphae, and some yeast are in there as well. Asexual reproduction is in Conidia. In Conidia, these little spores are there, and Conidia actually means dust. And sometimes when maybe you opened up something that has fungus in it, and it just kind of explodes into all these spores. Have you ever done that? No? And they become airborne then. Sexual reproduction are in what's called ascospores. They are formed, this is the sac part of the fungi. Because this fungi is in, this is one of the fungi that are in the sac fungi. So what we're talking about is when they do the sexual replication, they're going to put spores. These are called ascospores. And it's inside of this sac called an ascus. And that's your sac part of the sac fungi. They live in the soil, and they are also saprophytic. Basidiomycota, those are club fungi, and they include the mushrooms. We've all seen a mushroom, smuts, and rust. They also include a pathogen called Cryptococcus neoformans, and if you inhale those spores, you can come down with a lung disease. Hyphae are septate. Asexual reproduction is by fragmentation, and sexual reproduction is by basidiospores, and you can see a picture in your book. You might want to look at that one, because that one's a little bit different than the others. They live in the soil. They also can be found in bird feces. This Cryptococcus neoformans. Microsporidia. It's an unusual eukaryote in that it does not have mitochondria. It also doesn't have a hyphae. It is an obligate intracellular parasite, and it causes, in humans, it causes chronic diarrhea, keratoconjunctivitis, and this usually happens to people that are immunocompromised, such as AIDS patients. That's a type of fungi as well. So we can classify different mycosis or fungal diseases into 5 classifications. The first one is systemic mycosis. That means that the infection is deep within the body, and it can infect a number of tissues and organs. We don't like to see this one. Transmission is by inhalation of spores. They enter the lungs, and then and this makes sense, right? When something goes in your lungs, what's going on in your lungs?
Gas exchange.
Gas exchange. So we're taking in oxygen and getting rid of carbon dioxide. So when we're taking in oxygen, then our body is going to, via our blood, send that oxygen out throughout the body. So your fungal spores can hitch a ride with them. That's how they get spread throughout your body. Systemic mycosis is not contagious. If I had one, I couldn't give it to her. She couldn't get it. So these bacteria that cause systemic mycosis live in the soil. Some examples of those are histoplasma, or the disease is histoplasmosis, and coccidiomycosis. Now my sister, I told you, has this coccidiomycosis, and when she came down with it, my mother lives in a senior's home thing, and she was going to go up and visit. I guess she told them that she had that, and then they didn't know that she couldn't give it to anybody, but they didn't let her come until she provided all this documentation. Subcutaneous mycosis, that's where the infections beneath the skin